Callie and welcome to Kapowski Reads. It has recently come to my attention that I have not read as much Scottish literature as I would like. I've read quite a lot of classics, but I haven't read that many contemporary Scottish novels. While I am trying to read more books by Scottish authors, the books themselves don't need to be set in Scotland. I love fantasy books, so I am very happy for them to be set in a different world, or even just a different part of the world. This month I made a conscious effort to read a lot more books by Scottish authors. I'm hoping that I'm going to find some new favourite authors. At least two of the authors that I read from this month do have other works which are in this little pile, so I will be reading more of their stuff later. I suppose I'm just going to talk about what I did read. The first book I'm going to talk about, Duck Feet. This book was recommended to me by so many friends who have read it and absolutely loved it, and I'm very happy that I get to join them because I adored this book. I gave it 5 stars. I would love to give it more than 5, but 5 is the maximum, so that's what we get. This book is all about a girl called Kirsty who starts the book as a 12-year-old starting high school, and we go through high school with Kirsty, and it's all about their journey as a working class kid in Scotland. The book was written all in Scots language, which I didn't know. I didn't know about that. There's a sticker on the front of the book that tells me it won a prize for Scots language. I do feel like it could be enjoyed by anybody. It's very easy to read, and I know that that's quite rich for me to say as a Scottish person. Of course I can read it, but I still think that anybody could, and I think that you should because it's brilliant and I want to talk to more people about it. I absolutely loved Kirsty and I loved her friends. I don't know if I would say she was quite popular, but she certainly had a lot of friends and people really were fond of her, so it was really nice to sort of read about what felt like quite a positive experience in high school. Obviously there were things that happened that were not quite so positive for her at school. This book was an absolute roller coaster of emotions. I laughed heartily. I also cried quite a lot. There was a point where I was so upset by this book that I genuinely felt that my heart was physically breaking. It did turn out that it was heartburn, but at the time I thought my heart was breaking because this book, I did not expect this book to break me quite so much emotionally, but it did. This book was so utterly heartwarming and it was charming. I feel like the high school experience round about that time period was pretty universal, so I think that anybody who went to school at any point round about the 2000s would find elements of this book that they could relate to. This book was an absolute joy to read. I loved this book. I loved this book so much. I am about to go and send it off to a friend who I offered it to months ago because I said I would read it, and I have made them wait a long time to get this. The next one on my alphabetical list of Scottish books for this month is The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan. The Gracekeepers is a dual narrative book about North, who works on a circus boat with a bear. I mean, I was sold. I was sold instantly by the concept of a bear and a boat with a circus. It also tells the tale of Callanish, who is a gracekeeper, and her job is basically to almost do funeral services. It was such a fascinating book. The world building in this just felt so real. I loved the differences between the people who lived on the land and the people who lived on the water. They had different faiths and beliefs, and it was just so interesting. It was a very, very well fleshed out world. The circus itself I am not usually a big fan of circuses. I am scared of clowns because they're terrifying. But the clowns in this book were so fun. There was not a large shoe or red nose among them. The relationships between the people in the circus were just so lovely. They were like a big family. I absolutely loved the bear. I am such a sucker for a book that has an animal in it that has such a character. So I very much enjoyed that. I loved getting the backstory of North and of Callanish. They were so different, but they were very united, which I thought was beautiful. The book had really strong found family elements, and I'm all about that. Oh, this book, it just made my heart happy. The book was just whimsy. I'm all about whimsy. I gave this book 5 stars. It deserved every single one of those stars. It was beautifully written. The writing was almost poetry, and I just thought it was a beautifully written book, as well as a beautiful story and a little gentle romance. I read this book really quickly. I just didn't want to put it down. It made me quite happy. The next book that I read, The Luckenbooth by Jenni Fagan. I had a friend who was reading it this month and she really wanted somebody to talk to about it, and that's me. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I messaged my friend after the first part to tell her that I would love this book and I was so excited to read it, and then my interest sort of went down a little bit. I really loved the first part of this book. It hooked me, and then it sort of lost me a little bit in the second part, and then there were a few bits at the end that I was really into, but there were some parts of the story that I wasn't uninterested in them, but I sort of wanted to go to the other parts that I was more interested in. This book read more like an anthology, which I wasn't expecting, and an anthology isn't usually my sort of thing for fiction. This book was about the devil's daughter who comes to Edinburgh and places a curse on a very large tenement house. The book takes place between 1910 with Jessie, the devil's daughter, showing up in Edinburgh and going to 10 Luckenbooth, which is the house in which the majority of this story takes place. And then it goes all the way through in decade increments to 1999. On the blurb of the book, it does say that Jessie, the devil's daughter, places a curse on the building, and that is the reason that I picked this book up. I thought that sounded absolutely fascinating. I was really interested to read about the devil's daughter and to find out more about the curse. I was reading this book and just thinking, maybe I don't get it. And I did check with my friend who had read it, and I don't think she got it either. I really loved the chapters with Jessie, and I liked the chapters that were set in the 80s. I think they were my favourites. I liked some parts, but there were parts of this book that I just couldn't work out how they were related to the curse, or if they were just stories. Ultimately, I'm ending this book with so many questions that I don't know the answer to. It was very easy to read. It was my lunch break book this week, so I read it in 30-minute increments, and the book allowed for that because it didn't have massive chapters that would eat into my entire break. The book was atmospheric. The bits around Edinburgh outside of the house were so good. The house was so creepy. There were lots of really good parts of this book, but they just didn't feel cohesive to me. The chapter in the 70s was really exciting, but just felt like it was from a different book. It could just be that I've missed it. I've missed whatever it is. I'm probably going to read this again though, and it will no doubt make a bit more sense to me, and I will feel like a fool. My last Scottish read from November was Pine by Francine Toon. This is not the kind of book I would normally pick up. I just want that noted. The book won an award for basically for being a scary and creepy book. I'm not a huge fan of scary or creepy books. I don't know why I picked it. I'm really glad that I picked it because I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. This book is set in the Highlands and it features the main character is just an 8-year-old girl, Lauren. She lives with her dad and there's something not quite right in this book. That is definitely the kind of creepy, thrillery, gothic element that I love in a book. This book was creepy and scary to me. The majority of that was due to the author just writing this book in such a way that I was imagining all of these things. Well, the author was just laying little breadcrumbs and I had to try and work out, wait, what's going on? What is that? Why are there stone circles? It was so good. The setting felt so realistic. I'm from a small town, but their small town makes my small town feel like a metropolis by comparison. The people where they live are very suspicious of her dad and we don't know why until much later in the book. So it was really enjoyable reading this and trying to work out why he was getting the side eye, why people were whispering. All of the school kids are talking about her and she doesn't know why, and as a reader you don't know why either. So it was really interesting to sort of have almost half a story at the beginning and then slowly put the pieces together. It was like a jigsaw of a book and it turns out I like that. Lauren's babysitter, if you like, her teenage friend, she goes missing. It was lovely to read about everybody all just, you know, pulling in together to find the missing kid. This book had so many different elements in it. It was a story about a child who was just alone and just a little bit lost. It also had like a haunting element of this book. Supernatural, definitely, and that was creepy, but I really enjoyed it and I didn't think I would. I didn't think I would hate this book, but I didn't think I would love it nearly as much as I did. This book answered all of my questions. At the end, everything was tied up with a lovely, neat bow. I was not left wondering anything at all. This book was exquisite. Those were my November Scottish reads. I think I had a good experience with my Scottish reads this month. 2 5 stars, a 4 and a 3. I think that's pretty good. It's an average of 4+. Yeah, I think I had a good month. I'm feeling really positive about it and I'm excited to see what I pick up in December. I will be hopefully reading some Christmassy Scottish books. I've been receiving a lot of recommendations of books by Scottish authors and I'm loving it. So anyone with any recommendations, please, I would love if you shared them with me. Until next time, bye.